Hello everyone, welcome to Automation E2E. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to use locators in Selenium. We'll start by understanding what locators are, explore the different types of locators in Selenium, and get familiar with basic HTML structure. Then we'll dive into how to use each locator in detail and finish with some recommended best practices for using locators effectively. So, let's get started. Locators are a fundamental concept in web automation and testing, particularly when using tools like Selenium WebDriver. They are used to identify and interact with elements on a web page. Locating and interacting with elements on the web page is most important and the most frequent thing that you will have to do while automating a website. So learning effective use of locators is very important for writing a reliable and maintainable test scripts. When working with a website, there are often thousands of web elements present, and we need to uniquely identify the specific element we want to interact with. For example, in tutorial 3, we saw two input fields on a web page, but we needed to locate username field specifically, so we identified it uniquely. Similarly, a page may have many buttons, but we want to perform an action on a particular button. In that case, we use locators to find and interact with that specific element. So when somebody asks what locator are, we can say locator are mechanism or strategy used to find and interact with web elements on a web page. They enable automation scripts to pinpoint the exact element on which actions such as click, typing, retrieval of information are to be performed. And it is very important as without accurate locators, scripts may fail to interact with the correct web elements, which is the main cause of flaky tests or test failures. There are several types of locators that you can use with Selenium, each of them serving different purpose and suited for different scenarios. Let me give you a quick overview of different types of locators we have, and then we can deep dive into each one in details. We have categorized locators into two main categories based on how they are derived. First is attribute based locators, and then we have pattern based locators. Attribute based locators are derived from specific HTML attributes, making them straightforward and efficient. These are often referred to as static locators, and these include ID, name, class name, tag name, link text, and partial link text. All these locators you can find very easily and directly when you inspect the HTML page, as they rely on specific HTML attributes to identify and interact with elements. These locators are straightforward and generally offer faster element identification. On the other hand, pattern-based locators use CSS and XPath expressions to find elements based on patterns, structures, and hierarchy within the HTML document. These locators are highly flexible and powerful, mostly used for handling complex queries. The primary pattern-based locators are CSS Selector and XPath Locators. Both attribute-based and pattern-based locators are essential tools for web automation. They provide the flexibility needed for robust web automation. Before we dive into the details of each locator, let me first introduce you to the structure of a HTML page and show you how to view the properties of web element on a web page. To do that, I'll open a practice site. We'll be using Tutorial Point demo website, which is great for beginners practicing automation. There are also many other demo sites that you can explore. I'll include those links in the video description. We'll follow the same steps that we did. We'll right click, we'll click on inspect to open this source of the HTML page. As you can see, this is the HTML structure. Every HTML page is structured in a tree-like format consisting of various elements. The basic structure is as follows. It has HTML tag. This element is the root element that contains everything in the page. As you can see, everything is highlighted. Then we have a head tag. This usually includes metadata, titles, links to external resources such as CSS, JS. So this is all included in the head tag. And then we have this body tag. This section includes all the visible elements of the page such as text, images, buttons, forms, etc. Let us discuss common tags that are there on a web element. So I've clicked on inspect and I've inspected this element. So as you can see, this is an input tag. And then I'll click on this. You can see it is a label tag. Input tag represents input fields such as text field. As you can see, it also can include buttons. Like if I inspect this one, this is also an input tag. It can be used for representing buttons as well. Then we have label tag. Label tag is used to describe elements. Like in this case, it's describing this text field here. Then we have div tag. Div tags are often used as containers or for structuring content, but can also be signed and assigned roles like buttons. Then we have this form tag. So as you can see, these forms, as the name says, represent a form. These are often used for login and registration kind of use cases. Another tag is, I'll inspect this one. You can see this is a tag, which means anchor tag. This represents a hyperlink. Like href here, which is an attribute, shows the link where the anchor tag will navigate you to. If I click on this, you can see I have been navigated to button.php. So that is what a tag does. It represents hyperlink. And then we have another common tag, that is button. You can see this is a button tag, which, as the name suggests, represents buttons. So these are all the basic HTML tags that you will come across while finding a web element. Now let's have a look at what attributes we can use for finding web element in Selenium. For that, let's open by class provided by Selenium. For that, let's revisit the code that we wrote earlier. Here you can see this line, we are finding an element, and here this is an important part. We are finding an element by XPath. In Selenium, the by class is used to locate web elements on a web page. By class is very important class in Selenium as it provides various static methods to find elements using different locators. So let's see what methods it provides. So as you can see the description here for by class, it's a mechanism to locate elements within a document. So it is providing different static methods here. First is ID, link text, partial link text, name, tag name, XPath, class name, CSS selector. So all these methods, if you remember, we discussed in our first slide of this tutorial. Now let's see one by one how to use these attributes. Now let's have a look at each locator in detail. Let's start with ID Locator. ID Locator uses the ID attribute of an HTML element for finding the web element. The advantage of using ID Locator is it's unique within a web page, making it most reliable and preferred web locator. Let's go back to our website. Here in the text box field, let's identify this full name field and see what attributes it has. So I've inspected it. As you can see, we have an input tag here. Inside the tag are all the attributes. It has ID, name, type, class, placeholder. Out of this, we can use ID, name, and class, because for accessing this, we have static methods in by class. We cannot use type and placeholder because we don't have any method to use it. As you can see, it has ID as a full name. Let's copy this. Let's now write a program to identify this element using ID, at the same time perform some action. In this case, as it is a text box, we'll send keys to it. Let's create a new Java class. Right click on Selenium, new Java class. Let's name it as Locators Practice. On class, let's write public static void main string array args. Okay, so let's create an instance of a driver. WebDriver is equal to new Chrome driver. Okay, as you can see, it has automatically imported WebDriver and Chrome driver here. Now driver dot get. So get method we use to provide the URL. So let's copy this text box URL and we have added it here. Now we have to find element, and for this we are going to find it by ID. Okay, so here we have to import this by class as well. As you can see, it is imported. Now let's enter the ID. Let's go here, paste it here. So we are all good. Now we have to just send keys here. Let's send it as automation E2E, the name of our channel. And let's see, let's run this program. The browser is opened, and as you can see, it has so quickly entered the text here. Also, ID is one of the fastest locator. So that is how you find an element using ID attribute of a web page. Let me close this program. Now let's have a look at Name Locator. Name Locator uses the name attribute of an HTML page to find an element. It can be useful for forms and input fields where name is frequently used. So let's get back to our website and let's inspect this full name again. Here you can see we have a name attribute as well. Let's copy this name attribute, and in our code what we have to do is, instead of using ID, we have to tell our Java program to use name attribute. So what we are doing here is we are going to find element by name, and let's paste the name. So here we are going to send keys as automation E2E, and let's run the program. So it has opened the browser and it has entered the text here. Let's have a look at class name locator. It uses class attribute of an HTML element to find the web element. In HTML, class name can be used to apply CSS styles to an element or a group of element for JavaScript actions. Using the class attribute as a locator in Selenium is helpful when multiple elements share the same style or function. Many elements may use the same class to define their style or behavior, so you can easily find them in bulk by using class locator. Some developers use class names that clearly define the role of the elements, like submit button, search box, or a text field. This makes it easier to select the correct element for automation. If multiple elements share the same class name, you can find it using find elements method to select them all. If a class name is unique to a single element, it will work similar to locating an ID, and you can find a single element uniquely. Let's get back to our website and try to find an element with a class name. So inspect again, we'll see if the full name has a class. As you can see, it has a attribute class and it has the value of form control. So let's copy this form control. So I've copied this. Let's see what other elements have this same attribute. I've pressed Ctrl F, which has popped up this window, and here I'll press the string. So as you can see here, it has found total 4 elements which has form control as value of the class attribute. Let's see what they are. So first is full name, then it's email, then the current address, and the password. So as you can see, all these values are formatted in the same way. That's why they have the same class name. So for finding such similar web elements on a web page, we can use class as an attribute. So let's get back to our code. Here, for finding single element, we used find element method. If we go inside find element, it just gives us a web element in return. So as you can see, finds the first web element using the given method. So whatever value it finds, it gives the first element of that. But in our case, we want multiple web elements. So for multiple web element, so we're going to find list of multiple web elements. So for that, WebDriver has another method, which is driver.findElements. Let's see what this method is. So find element method takes the object of by class as a parameter similar to find element method. But the difference here is it provides a list of web element. Since there are multiple web elements that we are expecting it to return, it is providing us a list of web elements. What find element does is it finds all the elements within the current page using the given locator mechanism, and it returns all of them in a form of list. The reason why we have list here is list can hold multiple values and duplicate values. So instead of using set or any other form of collection, they have preferred to use list in this case. So let's get back to our code, and here let's provide it value as a by, and we are going to use class name. So let's get back to the website and copy this class name here and paste it here. So as we saw, to hold the value that it returns, we need a list of web elements. So let's take a list of web element. Now it hasn't recognized this class, so let's import it. As you can see, we have imported web element. Also, we have not yet imported list, so let's import list from java.util. So this is the built-in from the collections framework. Let's name this variable. Let's name this as input fields. Okay. Now what we have done is we have find all the elements using class name on that particular web page, and those elements will be returned to us in a form of list of web elements, and we are storing it in this variable. Now let me just comment out this code, and to see how many elements we have got here, let me print it out for you guys. System.out.println number of input text fields on the page is input fields dot size. So as the name suggests, this size method of list will provide how many web elements are there in this list. So let's run this program and see what's the output. So it has opened the browser, it has checked how many elements are there, and we are going to print it in the console. As you can see, number of input text fields on the page is 4. These are the 4 fields that it has identified using the class name. So that is how it works. So in case there is an element which has a unique class name, you can use it to identify just one element, and you can use just find element method in that case and use the class name attribute here. And if you want to find multiple web elements like we did in this example, use this method, take it in a list, and perform whatever actions you need to perform using the web elements that you have got in this list. So that is how you use class name attribute in Selenium. As we saw earlier in this video, in HTML, a tag name represents type of HTML element such as div, input, button, etc. Using the tag name as a locator in Selenium can be useful in specific scenarios, such as when you want to interact with a specific type of element such as all buttons or input fields, or if you want to retrieve all anchor tags to get all the links on the page. In such scenarios, we can fetch a list of web elements that share the same tag name and then iterate over them or select a specific one. Tag name works best when the page structure is simple or you are interested in interacting with all elements of a certain type. It is not at all recommended for complex page structure. Let's get back to our website. Let's again inspect this. Here you can see it has input tag. Now let's find here in our find section how many tags are there. Again, there are just 4 of them, which is name, email, address, and password. Let's now find them. So finding multiple elements using tag name is similar to how we did for class name. Here we just have to replace it with tag name, and the tag that we are going to search for is input. As you saw on the website, there are total 4 fields with this tag. So let's say input tag, and we'll replace this here as well. Number of fields with input tag on the page are. Let's run this program. Browser opens up and it should have found, yep, so it has found the 4 fields that we just saw on the web page. This way you can use tag name as well to find an element on a website. Next is link text. The link text locator is used to specifically find hyperlinks on the page, that is web elements with anchor tag, the A tag which we saw previously. It uses the visible text of a link to find the element. If you want to interact with any link that doesn't has any other unique attribute to locate it but has a unique text on a web page, in that case we can use that unique link text to locate that element. Let's get back to our website. Here you can see if I perform and Control F and I'm going to find anchor tags. So there are almost 37 anchor tags here, out of which let's find this one, the checkbox. I'll inspect this one. So as you can see, this is an anchor tag, which is basically represents a link. This is the href attribute, which means if we click on it, it will redirect us to the checkbox.php page, and the text here is checkbox. So as you can see, there are no other attributes like ID or name to identify this. In that case, the best candidate here is the checkbox text field. So let's see in the code how we can use link text to locate this element. So I'm back to IntelliJ. Let me remove this. Since link text, we want to find the unique element, we will be using driver.findElement by link text. Here we have to give the link text that is visible. Here you can see it's checkbox, and also here you can see inside the anchor tag it has a checkbox text written here. So let's use that text, checkbox, and we'll perform an action to click on it, so it will redirect us to the checkbox page. So I've ran this program and let's see what happens. Great, it has clicked the checkbox field. So in this way, whenever you come across such situation where you don't have any other attribute to locate a particular link, in that case you can use link text method to locate that web element. Next is partial link text locator. This is similar to link text, but the only difference is link text tries to match the exact text of a link. On the other hand, partial link text just matches the substring, that is the partial text given by us of the visible text of a link. It's beneficial when you know only a part of a link text, or when text is dynamic but contains a predictable part. Also when you have multiple links with similar text and you want to locate all of them. Let's go to our website again. Here, let's say I want to find whichever link has the text as button. So on this UI, I can at least see 2 of them. So let's write a code to see how many links are there with the text button visible on the UI. Let me comment this one and uncomment this code because we are going to deal with multiple elements. So let's write the code here. Let's rename this as link text button. Let's use this here, and we are going to find by partial link text this time. And the text that we are going to find is button. So let's change this as well. Number of links with text as button on the page are. Let's run this program and see the output. So the page is open and the program is most probably executed. You can see it has found the exact number, that is 2, and on the page also you can see there are just 2 links that have button in them. So that is how you use partial link text locator. Next is CSS Selector. CSS Selector allows you to find web element based on their CSS properties. It is widely used because it's highly flexible and efficient in locating elements even in complex HTML structures. CSS Selector is most widely used when web elements don't have any unique attribute like ID, name or class, etc. In this case, you can use CSS Selector to find elements using combination of classes, attributes and tag names. Also, CSS Selector are preferred for finding such complex elements because they are typically faster than XPath in most browsers. In this tutorial, we'll see very basic of it so that you get familiar to CSS Selector. We will create a separate tutorial on this topic. Let's get back to our website. Here, let's again inspect this text box. So the easiest way to find CSS Selector is right click here, go to copy and select copy selector, and let's see what it has copied. We'll just press Ctrl F and I'll paste it here. So I have pasted it here. What does this CSS Selector mean? The hash denotes that this web element has an ID attribute and the value in front of it is the value of the ID. Since this has ID attribute, it's very straightforward. Now let's try to inspect this current address field. Here, let's assume we don't have ID and name attribute to locate this element uniquely. In that case, we'll have to rely on other CSS attributes that it has. So let's try to find it using class. And let's try to use CSS Selector in this case. So for class, as we had hash for ID, for class we have dot. So here the class name was form control and I'm pasting it here. So as you can see, it has totally found 4 elements. Now I have to uniquely find the current address field. So to do that, let's see what these 4 elements are. So the first one is full name, which is an input tag. The next one is email, which is again an input tag. The third one is current address, which is a text area. It's not an input, so we can use this one. Before that, let's see what's the fourth one. Great, this is also an input one. So here we can use a combination of tag name and class name to identify current address field uniquely. So how to use that? So for class name, we had to do this. To add a tag here, the syntax goes something like this. You can see it on the screen, the tag name dot the class name. So let's add the tag name here, text area. Now you can see it has uniquely find this one field here. So let's use this CSS selector in our code to interact with the current address field. So here we don't want to interact with multiple elements. We just want to interact with single element. So we'll use find element method. And here, instead of using link text, we are going to use CSS selector. So let's remove this dot. This is the method that we are going to use. And let me paste what we copied. This is the CSS selector for current address. And let's send keys to it. So let me add it again. The name of our channel, automation E2E. And since it's an address, it's on YouTube. All right, let's execute this program. So as you can see, it has entered the current address here successfully. So that is how you use CSS selector for finding an element on a web page in Selenium. XPath, also known as XML path language, is used to navigate through elements and attributes in an XML or HTML document. XPath allows you to locate elements by their attribute text or even relative position in the DOM. Use XPath when all other locators fail, that is for elements that lack unique identifier like ID or name, or when the page structure is too dynamic for basic locators to handle it. It is especially helpful for handling web pages with nested structure or dynamically changing elements. There are two types of XPath. First is absolute XPath, which starts from the root of the document, that is /HTML, and goes step by step to the element. It's brittle and should be avoided at any cost whenever possible. Next is relative XPath. It starts from anywhere in the document using double slash, making it more flexible and less dependent on changes to the page structure. Below is an example. Double slash, then the tag name that you want to identify, and then any attribute that it has to identify it uniquely. Always prefer to use relative XPath as it's more flexible and less brittle compared to absolute XPath. In this tutorial, I'll just get you familiar with how to use relative XPath locator for simple structure. XPath is a vast topic, so we will create a separate tutorial for more advanced usage of XPath. Let's get back to our website. Let's open inspect again, and for getting you familiar with XPath, we will try to find this radio button here. So as you can see, this anchor tag, that is this radio button, doesn't has any unique attribute to identify it. So in this case, let's try to use XPath to identify this uniquely. So one simple way we saw earlier was right click on copy and copy XPath. So this is a simple way you can do, but let's say if this doesn't works. For that you have to have a good understanding of how to create an XPath. For that we'll press Ctrl F and we will get this string here. Now here for writing a XPath, you have to traverse through the HTML structure. Our target is this anchor tag. It doesn't has any unique attribute. So in this hierarchy, before anchor tag comes the list tag, that is li tag. Li tag also doesn't has any unique attribute. It has class name, but this is shared by multiple elements here. So we cannot use this as well. So after li tag comes ul tag, that is unordered list tag. Here you can see we have a unique attribute, that is ID. To find the relative XPath, as we saw, we have to first do double slash and then the tag name that we want to identify. In this case, we want to identify UL. So now we have reached till this tag. To make it more reliable, let's give ID attribute and give the value in double quotes, which is nav menus. Now you can see we have uniquely identified till this layer. For moving forward, we have to use forward slash and the next element we want to reach is li tag. But the problem here is there are a total of 9 li tags. So let's see which one we want. This is the first one, this is the second one, which is the checkbox, and this is the third one. So radio button is highlighted. To identify the third li element, you have to give in square bracket the index. In this case it is 3. Now you can see it has uniquely identified this li tag, which has our radio button link. Inside this, the next tag is anchor tag, which is what we want to identify uniquely. For that again we'll use a forward slash and we will add an anchor tag. So as you can see, this XPath which we have written here can uniquely identify this radio button and we can use it in our code. So let's copy this. Let's go back to our code. Here let us remove this. Here we want to identify using XPath locator. So let's use XPath and let's paste the XPath that we found and we are going to click on it. Alright, let's run this code. Great, you can see it has clicked on the radio button link and this page has been popped up. And that is how you use XPath locator. Selenium 4 also has relative locators. For that as well, we'll create a separate video. The choice of locator depends on the specific scenario and the structure of the web page. Here are some recommended guidelines to choose a locator. Use ID Locator whenever possible. They are unique and fast. Use Name Locator for form elements. When ID is not available, name is often a good alternative. Use CSS Selector for styling based selections. They are powerful and generally faster than XPath. Use XPath for complex hierarchies. When other locators are insufficient, XPath can help you navigate through complex HTML document structures and dynamic web pages. Avoid relying on text-based locators like linked text and partial linked text. They can be useful but are more prone to changes. In the next tutorial, we'll explore important GET methods provided by the WebDriver interface. That's all for this tutorial. If you find it helpful, do like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.